episode of wjlive, powered by the Western Journal. I'm Michael Austin, the supervising reporter here at the Western Journal. Today I'm joined by Joey Chester, our head of distribution operations. What's the official title?
The official title, Manager of Publishing Operations.
Manager, that's pretty fancy.
It does sound fancy. It's not as fancy as it sounds.
Well, today we're talking about a story that is not so fancy. Actually, it's straight up disgusting. And that is why we need the Florida so-called Don't Say Gay bill. Now, the left has been targeting this bill as some sort of, anti-civil rights, discriminatory legislation that's targeting gay and transgender individuals. They're saying, Jen Psaki, White House press secretary, during a recent press conference said, "Whoa, you know what, Peter Doocy, can you even name one example of teachers grooming kids, teachers giving some sort of explicit sexual instruction to kids below an appropriate age?" Well, Jen, we've devoted this whole show to giving you 6 examples, and believe me, we had dozens and dozens to choose from. Yeah.
It was hard to pick just 6 to show you guys because there's so many, and it's horrifying just how many there are.
Yeah, and so we're all on the same page. The Don't Say Gay bill specifically prohibits, and this is in Florida, classroom instruction regarding sexual orientation or gender identity for children in kindergarten through 3rd grade, or for ages, instruction that is inappropriate for that particular age. So in 4th grade, if they're teaching about I don't even want to go through all the sick and twisted things. We'll start doing that with some of these videos. And so, Joey, he's put together 3 videos, and these are, teachers coming out on social media, basically explaining how they're teaching kids about transgenderism, about being gay, things that kids in kindergarten, 1st grade, middle school, they shouldn't be taught these things. There's a reason that we have a certain particular age of sexual consent, because kids don't have the capacity to understand the ramifications of sex, gender, all of these things. But you have a growing class. The liberal establishment, their takeover of all of our cultural institutions has created this generation of people that think they need to liberate kids from basically Christianity, Christian values, traditional values.
Liberate them from their parents?
From their parents. You have some schools that are explicitly telling their teachers, hey, don't tell these kids' parents what they're doing in school. Yes. Don't tell them about how they're having a new gender identity at school. So we're going to start showing you some of these videos. I've got 3. Joey's got 3. Here is the first video I selected. I'm not sure quite what order they're in, but we'll watch it all together.
I never tell parents, period. On their survey at the beginning of the year, when it asks for preferred name and pronouns, it also asks for what you want me to refer to you as when I call home and what pronouns to use. So then I just make sure when I'm calling home, I use what they prefer when I call home. Even if someone told me I couldn't do that and I couldn't call them whatever they want or the pronouns they want without parent permission, I would still do it.
So this one was really important one to show for me. My audio's playing. Oh, there we go. That threw me off a lot.
It always does.
I need to give it a half second. They've told me I have to wait a half second before I start talking, so that's all my fault. But no, this video, this is what we were just talking about. So basically what she was explaining was, I assume she is the pronoun that is.
I think it's safe to guess.
It looked like possibly a they, but I'll go with she. But she's not telling the parents if the kids are socially transitioning at school.
Yeah.
If so, the kids are given an option. Okay, if there are certain pronouns you want us to call you at school, and then different pronouns we want to address you as when we're calling your parents, when we're trying to contact you at home, just in case the kids are trying to hide their gender transition from their parents. And this teacher says, even if people are telling me I'm not allowed to do that, I'm going to do that. I'm going to hide it from the parents because we need to liberate these kids. We need, these are trans kids, and we need to liberate them from their parents.
Yeah, I think it shows you how sometimes it shows you just how little parents know about what's going on in schools. I mean, unless you're really, truly actively engaged in your kid's school, which I think you should be. But even then, if teachers are just straight up lying to you, if you call up your kid's teacher and they just straight up lie to you and don't tell you the truth, that's a major problem.
Yes. And we've seen dozens of stories like this where, either the school has made explicit instructions, rules for the teachers to where they cannot be honest with parents. That's happened a lot where it's from the top down. The administrators are making rules where teachers cannot be transparent to parents. Then in cases where they don't have those rules, the teachers are doing it anyway.
Yes.
They're being dishonest anyway. So we believe that you as a parent have a right to know what's happening with your kid, to, be able to, if your kid starts to experiment with all this sexual transgender stuff, we believe you have a right to help guide them in the direction you think is best.
Absolutely. I mean, I think one way to view it, everyone always talks about, elected officials, they work for us. It's kind of the same thing for teachers. Like, teachers also partially work for the parents. Like, parents should play a big role in education. And it's really horrifying.
Well, and, there are plenty of the majority of teachers out there are hardworking people who are doing the best they can for the kids.
Absolutely.
That being said, when you work for a public school, that public school teacher is an agent of the state.
Yep.
That sounds a little hyperbolic, but it's 100% true.
Yeah.
And, when we decided to have this, we're going to take Bibles out of school, it didn't become neutral. Okay, they took on a secular worldview that is not neutral. That's a different set of values from Christian values. Anyway, so moving on, we're going to play another clip here, and this is a similar situation with a teacher explaining how she interacts with her trans kids at school.
I am an out teacher at my school, out as both bisexual and trans, and a lot of other teachers on TikTok were wondering how I managed coming out to my students. And it's a really interesting story. So this was right before the pandemic. I came back to my school after being away from it for a while, during which time I transitioned. So none of the kids knew me as trans, but I wanted to talk about it. So what I did is, as soon as I came back, I joined up with the GSA, realized how many questions the kids had, and decided the best thing to do would be to host a Q&A. So the kids made up a whole bunch of flyers, and then one day during lunch, we hosted the tea talk. It was a triple entendre of T as in trans, T as in spilling the tea, and T as in we literally served them tea. It was great. It was a huge success. So many people showed up. We didn't have nearly enough tea for everyone. And I spent about 10 minutes talking about the difference between gender, sex, and sexual orientation, and then also talking about my own life story, sort of like the highlight reel of how I decided to come out. And then for the remaining 30 minutes, the kids asked questions and I gave answers wherever I felt comfortable.
So
this person should not be teaching kids.
I mean, that's what we're talking about with grooming kids. If we were to back up a bit, so the reason why we don't want this stuff even talked about in front of kids at all. So all of this stuff is based on, the idea that gender is fluid, that sex, your sex has no bearing on what your gender identity is going to be. That's all part of this academic theory called gender theory. It's not based in science. It's a pseudoscience created by a series of, academics. I mean, it's psychologists that were just practicing pseudoscience on children.
Yeah.
The man largely believed to be the kind of father of gender theory, John Money. His experimentation on the Reimer brothers, these two twins, that's sort of the basis for this whole thing. So you had David, and I believe Bruce was his brother's name. Reimer, twin boys. This is back in early 1900s, I think. But regardless, David, in a tragic botched circumcision, he lost his penis when he was a baby, okay? And so then this psychologist, John Money, comes along. He comes to the family. He says, hey, I have this theory that boys can be raised as girls and girls can be raised as boys, that gender identity is totally disconnected from sex, and that your son could be raised as a girl. And so the parents decided, all right, we're going to let our son be raised as a girl. And, David, I forgot what name he identified with, but, he grew up as a girl. But, eventually, as he went into adulthood, he just felt like, I still don't feel quite right.
Yeah.
I still feel a little off. He ended up transitioning back, and then he ended up killing himself. And it was later revealed that this John Money, this father of gender theory, the whole reason that we have kids transitioning nowadays, he had been posing the two brothers in sexual positions with one another, taking pictures of it for his own personal collection. This guy was nothing short of a pedophile, and he created, what people are saying is kind of like the, Enlightenment science of the sexes, of gender. And so you have child abuse, suicide, mental illness, pedophilia. It is baked into this movement from the beginning. The sexualization of children is baked in from the beginning. And now you're seeing it today with all of this content. What is your gender? What is your sexual orientation? Well, guess what? It's fluid. Guess what? You should be deciding that as a child in 3rd, 4th, 5th grade.
We saw the video earlier of Pete Buttigieg today saying that the Don't Say Gay bill, it's not actually Don't Say Gay bill, but
could also be called Don't Say Straight bill.
Yes.
Just as accurate.
He claimed that this bill was going to kill children.
Kill children, yep.
And it's actually the opposite of that.
Yeah.
Children will die without this bill being in place.
Yes.
For the reasons that you just said, for what gender ideology leads to. If you teach kids that, if you teach boys that they can be girls and then they do transition, they have a really good chance, and it's tragic, that they may end up killing themselves or at least suffer from incredibly high rates of depression. So, it's so infuriating when you see someone like Buttigieg say, this bill's going to kill kids.
Well, what this is leading to, so Mayor Pete, what he's pushing and what people he supports are doing, that's what's killing kids.
Yes.
And I recommend you guys look up the research of Deborah So, Abigail Schreier. They look into this stuff a lot. But what is happening now, because of all this gender craziness, you have developmentally stunted kids, kids with autism, kids with Down syndrome, kids and kids with other, conditions and ailments and developmental disorders. They don't quite feel right.
Yeah.
They feel a little off. They look at everyone else and they're like, I'm not quite normal. And then they hear this ideology and they think, oh, the reason I'm not normal is because I'm not in the right body. I should be a boy or I should be a girl. And so you have all of these people transitioning. You have these kids, they're allowed to get sex change treatments, hormone therapies, in some cases like mastectomies for the girls. I just saw this horrifying video on TikTok that just highlighted all of these women showing, all these like young, they may have been 18, but they're young women showing off their mastectomies for transitioning. It's shocking stuff. They're doing it to themselves. And then what we see in a lot of cases is, they feel great the first year after the surgery. And then as the years go on, they go back to not feeling normal still. And they're like, oh, wait, I guess that permanent sex change procedure didn't make me whole. I guess I still don't feel better, and now I've permanently lost, my fertility for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
So
you've got adults, and you touched on this, they feel like kids don't feel like they really fit in. They wonder why they don't feel right. And you have adults and people on the left taking advantage of children. That's what they're doing.
Yeah.
They're taking advantage of the ways that these kids feel and providing them, well, this is the reason why you feel like you don't fit in.
Well, they're profiting from it.
Yeah.
Like, it's basically, how are you going to sell your transgender ideology? Well, I can convince a bunch of autistic girls, and tends to happen more with girls than boys, this what they're calling rapid onset gender dysphoria. But, if they want to sell their movement, they can convince a bunch of autistic girls that they're transgender, get them to transition, put them on tape and say, hey, here are the champions of the movement. Oh, do you want to discriminate against this little boy? Yeah. Oh, then, well, maybe you're the problem. Yeah. That's what's happening right now.
Yeah. You're right.
Yeah. And in a lot of these cases, the suicide rate in the transgender community is super high. There are all these stupid short-term studies that don't take a lot of variables into effect that claim that sex change makes that suicide rate go down, but the only longitudinal studies, and that means studies that take into effect, they check in like 10 years later, 5 years later, those all show that the suicide rate returns, the suicide attempt rate, all of that stuff, depression, all of the mental illnesses return after a certain period of time. Because right after the surgery, you know, they're going off this high.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm
Lots of
finally whole
attention.
again. All the attention from just transitioning. Once that fades away, once that high fades away, they're back to being the same person they were. You know, just changing your body a little bit does not change who you are on the inside.
No, you can't change biology.
All right. Well, that we got a pretty good background of all this stuff
Yes.
now filled in. This last clip. So this is some audio from, and this is the last of my 3 clips. This is some audio that a student kind of took during a class, and this is actually from Phoenix, Arizona.
Oh boy.
This 6th grade teacher is basically teaching her kids, hey, you need to be who you are on the inside, and that's not necessarily who your parents told you you are. So let's play this clip.
All right, you can't wear girl clothes. Okay. What else? What are the things the society say boys are supposed to be like or not do? Brandon? No, don't you dare play with the doll. That's a girl thing to do. Yeah. What else? What else, boys, aren't you supposed to do? And it might be that you've heard this from family members. Grant?
You're not supposed to you're not supposed to be pretty.
Right. You don't get to wear makeup, do your hair, wear nails.
Why would you?
Because some people like that. It's who they are. There are still people in our society, the older generations, who that's the hard line. That's how they grew up. That's their mentality. You don't cross that line. You are a boy, you are a girl, those are your roles, you know what you're supposed to do. But as your generation's coming around and the generations that are going to come after you, we are hoping that that line completely disappears. And there is no line. And you are free to be whoever it is that you want to be. And you dress and act and do whatever it is that you want to do because that is who you are. But society there's still a line.
There's a lot
So
to unpack there.
Kids are super malleable. You know, you can form and shape them however you like. And that these teachers know that. And they're saying, you know what? If we want this transgender movement to go, you know, to be successful, we're going to have to mold these kids as our new generation of, you know, LGBT youth, our new generation of left-wing activists. And that's what was happening there. You know, that clip is longer there's a version of it on Rumble. She goes on to basically say, you know, your parents' generation is going to die off. And once your parents die, the world will be a better place because you'll be there to usher in, you know, get rid of those blurred lines and usher in peace and prosperity. So.
Yeah, you know, this teacher's in a position of authority, and when you're young, of course you're going to listen to someone in a position of authority. And there's a lot more issues with what she's saying just beyond the whole gender fluid stuff. It's also, you know, you probably heard it from family members. You probably heard it from your parents. Don't listen to your parents. And, you know, gender roles don't matter. I mean, why do we think that we see this mass loss in the family structure in the United States? And you see kids who want to be rebellious from their parents. It's partially because of what these teachers are doing in schools. Like, it's beyond just, I mean, obviously the gender stuff is really alarming, and grooming kids is really alarming, but it also causes and contributes to all these other issues in the country. Yeah. So.
And then we got 3 clips that you brought, Joey, which continue to be just as awful and disgusting.
I mean, this stuff's just really alarming. This first one I'm going to show you is from a quote, gender fluid witch. And this is a preschool teacher, teacher. So we're talking like 4-year-olds. So just keep that in mind while you listen to this.
Man, y'all thought me teaching the children about me being poly was crazy. But not only that, but they also know that I'm gender fluid. At one point last year, I had explained to them that I was not Miss Lois or Mr. Lois. It's just Lois because I'm not a boy or a girl. And this was all well and good until October, when I also explained to them that I'm pagan, so I am also a witch. And at one point, I had gotten a haircut, and I got on the sides of my mohawk shaved down. And I come into work, and one of the children goes, "Lois, are you a boy? You have short hair." And his sister goes, "No, Lois is a girl." And a third child, who's my favorite, suddenly yells, "No, guys, we've been over this. Lois isn't a boy or a girl. Lois is a witch. Duh."
Lois shouldn't be teaching preschoolers.
I feel like she transitioned from her name being Lewis to Lois.
I think so. I don't know.
Odd. I don't know.
But, there's so much wrong with, like, let's say these. Okay, it would be different if she was what she was.
Yeah.
And she didn't ever speak a word about it with the kids. She just went to school. She taught the kids what they're supposed to learn, and she didn't speak a word. I mean, and when they ask her, you know what the right response is when a kid asks you about the way you look or whether you're a boy or girl or whatever. You say, that's something that you need to talk with your parents about.
Yeah.
It is not something
Great
that
answer.
a teacher should be talking to 4-year-olds about.
There's been several videos that the mainstream media has just jumped at playing where they talk to all these Florida teachers and they ask them, "Hey, are you concerned about the Don't Say Gay bill?" Usually gay Florida teachers.
Yeah, right.
And they've had, I think I've seen at least 2 examples of these people going, "Yeah, I'm afraid that I can't talk about, this guy talking about, I'm afraid I can't say that I just, if they ask me what I did this weekend, I can't say that I, went boating with my husband." Yeah, no, the bill does not ban you from doing that.
Correct.
The bill bans instruction on sex or gender. So if you say you were boating with your husband, that's fine. If they ask you, "Well, why do you have a husband?" then maybe that's something you should ask your parents about. That's always a great answer.
Yeah, and you form, I think, in your subconscious when you're young, a lot of ideas. And so if you're a 4-year-old and you're hearing about, the gender fluid stuff, your teacher's transgender, but also your teacher's a witch.
A pagan witch.
Yeah, and then you get curious. I mean, what kind of rabbit hole does that lead down? And what kind of damage does that do to a young child's brain where it's engraved in their subconscious for the rest of their life?
And here's a point that I mentioned earlier and I just really want to hammer home, which is even setting aside her being pagan and her being a witch, okay?
Yeah.
Her teaching her kids this idea, the kids in her class, this idea about how she's not a girl or a boy, that is a religious belief. That is the idea that there are boys, there are girls, and there are things that are neither boy nor girl. That's a religious belief. We're not allowed to talk about the Bible in class, but she's allowed to preach her religion. She's allowed to get her kids to preach her religion to those kids, to get those kids indoctrinated in that religion at a school that is funded by the state. Okay? That is a state-sponsored religion. All right, that is what that is at this point, okay? We do not have a freedom from religion. We have a banning on any religion except for the religion that the state chooses as best. That's how we are living right now. Yeah. And it's not just that these teachers are just going off and they're kind of going rogue. We aren't just taking examples of 6 teachers that went rogue. There are sets of curricula across the country in schools all over the country that tell teachers to teach their kids about these ideas, okay? This is a state-sponsored religion. That is what this is 100%.
Yeah, and what's really alarming is these are just the teachers that are willing to go online and talk about it.
Yeah.
I mean, these are some...
Got to be a small percentage.
Yeah. Think about all the teachers that also think like this, but they just don't post about it online.
Yeah.
So... I've got another clip for you guys. This is another person that just shouldn't be teaching kids. And if my kid came home and told me about this, I would probably pull them from the school immediately. Let's roll this next clip.
I ended up telling my students that I was gay. And how it came up was one of the students was like, my mom thinks that you're gay because of your voice. And I'm like, maybe, maybe not. So they were asking me if I was, because I kind of alluded that I was. So I kind of let them wonder and ponder on it. And I have like, like the LGBT promotional, like this is a safe community kind of stuff, the rainbow stuff all up in my room. And I told them, I'm like, if you look around the room, that should give you an answer to your question. So I did officially tell them. They, of course, went berserk. So instead of teaching social studies today, they just asked me a whole bunch of questions about being gay. So I think it was pretty well.
So it's almost like he had it right at the beginning. Like, he just left them guessing.
Yeah.
Like, okay, you can, your voice sounds a certain way. The kids are going to wonder about you. But just leave it at that. You don't need to come out to them and then spend an entire class educating them about being gay. I mean, that's just...
yeah, and we're a Christian company. We believe in the traditional, Christian sexual ethics and all of those things. But you'd probably, there are quite a few, of the L's and the G's that disagree with this kind of treatment.
Yeah.
Like teaching kids, giving kids sexual instruction at this young of an age. It's ridiculous. And then what else he's doing is he's tying the L's and the G's to the B's and the T's, which is becoming, there's a bit of a rift happening in that community. Like and associating, gayness with transgenderism and then teaching that to kids. There's so many evil connections are being made in there. It's ridiculous. So.
Yeah, I do think there's a lot of gay people who don't like what's happening.
There's nuance that needs to be in these conversations that a lot of parents would probably provide to their kids if they knew the conversations were being had.
Yeah. Michael, you touched on earlier how this is not something that just teachers are deciding to do, but this is literally being built into curriculums. The state is sponsoring curriculums that make teachers teach these things. And again, that's why the Florida bill is so important. So we're going to turn to New Jersey now, where a new curriculum has been established.
Oh, boy.
And this is something that 9-year-olds are going to be learning about. I have to give you a bit of I don't know if it's super graphic, but just be prepared.
Yeah.
This is not something I want to watch.
But it's for kids to watch.
But it's for 9-year-olds to watch. So let's play the video.
Is it normal to watch porn?
Hashtag AskAmaze!
Yes, it's normal. Lots of people watch porn. After all, it's right there and it's free. And anyway, many people are curious about this sex stuff. But, and it's a big but, remember, porn is not real. It's just a fantasy, like superheroes movies. Bodies don't look like those in porn movies. In general, everything is exaggerated. And sex, it often looks very different in real life. So don't expect your own body or sex life once you have one to look anything like what you see in porn. Or to sound like it either.
Find out more about porn right here on a Mate.
Again, 9 years old.
Yeah, it's normal to watch porn.
It's normal. Yeah, go home. Go home, do it.
Sadly, they're probably actually right about it being normal.
Well, yeah, it has been totally normalized, and it's destructive.
Yes,
it's incredibly destructive.
Left out.
It's destructive to relationships, to families, and so you're teaching 9-year-olds things that are going to be destructive to themselves, their families, their potential future partners.
Yeah,
and like they're literally saying in the video, you hear they say, "Oh, your sex life," but like not yet. So they are implying like this is for a younger audience.
Yeah, for people below.
Yeah,
18.
And again, these are minds that can be influenced so easily, and it's authority teaching this. This is baked into a state curriculum.
Well, if I'm a kid and I watch that, my thought is, okay, I can watch some porn.
Yeah,
like it's not going to end. It's not going to ruin anybody's lives.
Yeah,
even though it's doing that every day.
Yeah, it's literally like it's a massive.
Not to
problem.
mention, just by viewing any of those sites, you're helping prop up and incentivize an industry that like abuses children,
Shocker.
women. The line from you watching porn to you creating an incentive for sex traffickers to create child porn, that might sound like that's super disconnected. Oh, I can watch porn and not do that. No, you're doing that. If you click into any of those sites, which the top porn sites are actually some of the most clicked on viewed sites, I believe, in the entire internet.
Yes.
I forgot.
Yeah.
They have rankings for like these are the top clicked on sites, and the porn sites are all at the top. And kind of in the nitty gritty of a lot of those sites is a lot of sex trafficking videos, a lot of child porn videos that sneaks kind of under the radar. And you're helping prop up that industry, and that's not even talking about the psychological toll that does to young men and young women, young men specifically.
And this video might be new. This curriculum might be new, but this is not the first time that porn has been a thing that young kids have had to see. There's been a book that has been popping up in libraries across the country. And I'm not talking like college libraries. I'm talking elementary school libraries across the
middle
nation
school
and middle
libraries.
schools. It's called Gender Queer. And it has like the images from it are literally so graphic that we cannot show them to you.
Yeah, Gender Queer, a memoir by Maya Kobabe, I believe. We have covered this extensively. It is the inclusion of this book into schools in at least like 8 states, and probably more. It's been in it's been found in school libraries across the country. People keep finding it. It has kind of cartoon, comic style depictions. So that would kind of like what you'd see in a comic book, that sort of artwork of straight up pornography. The subjects look rather young. The author claims that everybody involved is over 18. Their faces look very young. It looks like you're watching child porn when you read those books. And it's explicit. It's not like they're hiding anything. The images are extremely explicit. The reason it's been showing up, and Western Journal published a story sort of breaking this. You can look it up. Book depicting child pornography keeps appearing in school libraries, we now know who's responsible. The reason this kept showing up in school libraries is because these two school library associations both recommended that this book be included in school libraries. And basically, when you're a school librarian, you go to these organizations, you look at their list of recommendations, and you usually order a good amount of those books for your school library to help build it out. Both of these groups recommended it as a good resource for that will resonate with teens about LGBTQ plus issues. And it's porn. Kids are going to view it. They can't consent to sex. People keep pushing back against us saying that the Don't Say Gay bill is an anti-grooming law. And what we're trying to ban is the sexual grooming of young children. People have been pushing back against that. They've been saying, you're just calling them pedophiles. That's way over the line. And you can look this up, one of the number one grooming tools for a pedophile is to show pornographic material to a kid below the age of consent. What that does is it normalizes sex for that kid. That kid can't understand what sex is. He sees these pictures, these images of people enacting, performing sex acts. And then he thinks, that would be normal for me to do. And so then an adult can come up to that kid and go like, hey, do you want to do this? It's been normalized for that kid. He's seen it in a book. He's like, oh yeah, I know how to do that. And it's a grooming tool for pedophiles. And these teachers, these pro-trans teachers are using it. And yet we're being told that they're not pedophiles, that they're not groomers, that they're not they're not grooming kids. That's exactly what they're doing.
I never realized, and maybe I should have, that we'd get to the point where the left defends pedophilia and grooming. And now you have someone, now we're going to have someone on the Supreme Court that defends child pornographers and gives leniency to it. It's all connected.
Well, it's wild. I used to criticize right-wingers for saying that, because right-wingers have been saying this for decades, that the left is trying to normalize pedophilia. The left is trying to sexualize children. I'll totally admit, even in the time that I've been a conservative, which is probably about 6-ish years now, I thought that was crazy. It is undeniably true at this point that the left, these left-wing LGBT activists, are trying to sexualize kids, and they're trying to, even if they're not normalizing straight-up pedophilia, they're normalizing aspects of pedophilia. That is 100% accurate.
Elected Democrats at the highest levels of government are defending this stuff being taught.
They've defended this book being in middle school libraries.
Yeah.
That is defending, that is normalizing aspects of pedophilia undeniably.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I mean, look, guys, if you didn't know why we needed the Florida Parents' Rights Bill, you do now, okay?
Yeah.
These teachers, lots of people that enter teaching are great, courageous people, probably most of them.
Yep.
But there are a contingent of people that are training up to be teachers, that are growing up to be teachers, and the only reason they've taken that role is to warp the mind of your kids, is to be an activist, to raise up the next generation of social justice warriors. It's the whole reason they're teachers. That's why we need a Don't Say Gay bill in all 50 states.
Absolutely.
And tell you what, it needs to not be just K through 3.
No.
It needs to be all K through 12. Okay,
Yes.
preschool. We need to ban this stuff from all education. Okay.
Just something really quick. I just want to encourage everyone, because it's not said enough. You need to get involved in your local school
Yes.
board. Like, seriously, see who's on your school board. I know a lot of people probably don't even know who's on the school board because it's such a obscure, you don't think about it that often, but it's critically important. You can actually have influence. So, like, show up at school board meetings, run for school board, like, pay attention to what's going on in your kid's school, because as a parent, you do have power and authority over what your kids are learning. So I just want to throw that word of encouragement.
The movement that has been stopping this stuff has been largely led by parents getting involved in local elections.
you've got to.
You absolutely can make a difference doing that, and people are doing it every day. For the past 2 years, they've been doing it. So, that's great note to end on. Thank you guys so much for joining us for today's episode of WJ Live. If you want to help out the reporting you're doing, if you want to help out this show, promote, good traditional Western values, Christian values, please consider subscribing to the Western Journal at westernjournal.com/join. That helps us circumvent big tech. Big tech is constantly throttling us. If we run any story about any of this trans stuff, Google takes away all of our ad money. Facebook will probably do the same. They're trying to make sure that we go under. And you guys, by joining, and we've been getting a lot of subscribers lately, and you that's been helping. You've been saving us. Thank you. And if you haven't, please consider doing so. It would be so much help to us, and it would really help spread a Christian conservative message. Also, make sure you follow us on YouTube at youtube.com/wjlive. You can get the podcast anywhere you can get audio podcasts. And thanks for joining us, and we will see you again on Monday.